Penguin Audio presents If I Had You by Lynn Kurland, read by Ilyana Kadushin. Prologue. England, 1215, Artane. The young girl stood at the door of the hero's quarters and looked out over the courtyard, eyeing the dirt and flat-laid stone that separated her from the great hall. Judging the distance to be not unmanageable, she released the doorframe she had been clinging to and eased herself down the 3 steps to the dirt. And then she grasped more firmly the stick she leaned upon and slowly and painfully began to make her way across the courtyard. Sunlight glinted off her pale golden hair and off the gold embroidery on her heavy velvet gown. Though it was much too hot for such a garment, the child had insisted. It hid the unsightly splint that bound her leg from hip to foot. She looked up and saw that the hall door was closer than it had been. No smile of relief crossed her strained features. She had yet far to go. "Ugly Anne of Fenwick! Thorn in Artane's garden!" The voices caught her off guard and she stumbled. She caught herself heavily on her injured leg. Biting back a cry of pain, she put her head down and quickened her pace. They surrounded her, not close enough to hurt her with anything but their words, though those were surely painful enough. Pages they were, for the most part, with one notable exception. A young man joined in the torment, a freshly knighted soul who should have known better. They circled her as she hobbled across the smooth stone path leading to the great hall, taunting her mercilessly. The knight folded his arms and laughed as she struggled up the stairs. "Why the haste, Gimp?" The maid had no time for tears. Safety was but 4 steps away. She ignored the laughter that followed her and forced herself to continue her climb. The door opened, and the lord of the hall caught her up in his arms and held her close. Her stick clattered down the stairs, but she had no stomach for the fetching of it. She clung to her foster father and let his deep voice wash over her soothingly as she was pulled inside the hall. The lord reached out to close the door, paused, then frowned deeply before he pushed the wood to. Had the girl looked out before the door was closed, she would have seen a dark-haired, grey-eyed lad of 10 and 4 standing on the front step of the healer's house, having come to take his own exercise for the day. And she would have seen the rage on his face and the clenching of his hands at his sides. He had witnessed the last of the tortures she'd endured. And had she been watching, she would have been privy to the events that followed. The lad shrugged off his brother's supporting arm and called to the young knight in angry tones. The knight sauntered over, his mocking snort turning into a hearty laugh when he heard the lad's challenge. There was no equity in the fight. The boy still recovered from a fever that had kept him abed for half a year. The knight was 5 years his senior, and the knight had no qualms about humiliating the lord's son each and every chance he had. It was over before it had begun. The dark-haired lad went face down in the mud and muck. The last shreds of his strength deserted him, leaving him wallowing helplessly. His brother stepped forward to defend him and earned a pair of broken fingers for his trouble. The knight sneered at them both, then walked away, the older lads in his entourage snickering behind their hands as they followed him, and the younger ones slinking away full of shame and embarrassment for the lad who had no strength to rise to his feet. The girl witnessed none of this. She was gently deposited inside the chamber she shared with her foster sisters, and had the luxury of shedding her tears of humiliation in private. Her young champion shed his tears in the mud. Chapter 1. England, 1225. The young woman sat atop her mount and looked down the road that separated her from the castle. She had traversed its length many times over the course of her 10 and 9 years, and felt reasonably acquainted with its dips and swellings. She was, however, eager to be free of its confines, and as a result off her horse, so she viewed it with a keen eye. Judging the distance separating her from her...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?